fascinated by a clip that I've been watching for the past few minutes or so. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So she's doing her thing, and she's unapologetic socialist. You know who she is before she comes through the door. She is speaking at, I guess it's some kind of education. It's some kind of education town hall. And she's getting heckled at this town hall. Her response to the heckling, though, is fascinating to me because I don't think I've seen it before. Take a look at this.
Each other is exactly what happened to the thought, because it's important that.
Because, you know, when Sanders is making his pitch and he's making his argument, and his pitch is, this is the richest country on the planet. There's no reason for people to be vulnerable and living in difficult situations in the way that they are. We can change this. A different world is possible. A, you need to believe it. B, you need to put me in office. That's his pitch. And he goes through his list of items that he says, these are problems. All of these things need to be reformed. All of these things need to be fixed. Ocasio, for all intents and purposes, is a Bernie-crat. And she has been unapologetic in her stances also. And in her being unapologetic, he gives Sanders more space in order to be Sanders and vice versa. It's like reverberates off itself. I think she's fundamentally right in her point of view. But I love her response to this. Let's take a look at this video. Her response is awesome. Because she gets to the root of it. As opposed to just kind of arguing on the top level.
That we have this discussion. My father was an exception to this rule, an exception to these statistics. So my dad was born in the South Bronx while the Bronx was burning. He was raised 5 people in a 1-bedroom apartment. And he did what he had to do, and my dad got into Brooklyn Tech. So my dad grew up, and growing up, my dad always told me about this experience going to Brooklyn Tech. He told me about what his life was like, where as a teenager, he got up and left his apartment at 5 o'clock in the morning every day to get onto the 6 train or to get onto the 4 train and ride a very dangerous subway during the 70s at 15 years old to go to Brooklyn Tech because it was seen as his only opportunity to have a dignified life. And he loved his experience at Brooklyn Tech because he went to a good school. My question is, why are there only 5 or a handful of schools in New York City that are seen to get us attractive? And my question is, why isn't every public school in New York City a Brooklyn Tech caliber school? Everyone should be. And so my appeal to what I'm hearing, and I respect the concern, because we need to put our children first. And so I understand the concern. But my concern I'd be happy to engage with these folks. My concern is that this right here, when we're fighting each other, is exactly what happens under a scarcity mindset. Because this should not be the fight. This should be the fight. This should not be the fight. We are in this.
At a certain point, she started to feed off the crowd. When the crowd got ramped up, she realized, yeah, this is an avenue that I can go with this. And she ran and went full bore into it. This is a scarcity mindset, meaning your behavior, the way you're acting right here, right now, when you're yelling at me, is from a mindset that believes that there's not enough to go around, in which case we have to fight one another in order to figure out who gets what. That's not our reality. You don't have to think about it in those terms, and you shouldn't think about it in those terms. It's the richest country on the planet. There needs to be a reevaluation of the social contract. That's her point. That's Sanders' point. I think that's Lefty's point in general. There is no such thing as a billionaire without you, as a worker, either working for that billionaire to allow him to make his profits, or as an individual that buys his product. In either case, his ability to be a millionaire or billionaire is entirely tied to and dependent upon you purchasing his product or working at his store. If that's true, which it is true, why do you have a society where 95% of the wealth goes to the top 1%? Makes no sense. And I'm talking about under the Obama administration, the time frame Obama was in office. I'm just making a very basic point that if their existence is entirely impossible without us, why on earth would we, as the people who make the society, allow them to profit to this degree, and often at our expense? There needs to be a reevaluation of the social contract. It's gone too far for too long in a particular direction, and these people, Ocasio, Sanders, are correctives. They are correctives to the system. So I love her response to this. Let me go back to this part. Because she's like, I'll engage with him. She says, but the issue here, really, when we're disagreeing with each other, I mean, part of that kind of depends on whether or not they even agree with you in a fundamental way. Like this, we need to build more schools, we need to invest more money into schools. They may not agree with that at all, just as a basic premise of whether or not a kid should be educated. But she has a damn good point that, it's like, why are you voting and supporting people who don't have your best interest in mind? Meaning, I know there's this thing where black Republicans feel like pariahs or like pariahs within the community itself. But there's no stigma on white Republicans fucking over whites in the country itself when these people are voting for people that are going against their self-interest. I mean, the overwhelming majority of the country is for Social Security and Medicare. They don't want them touched. If anything, they want them expanded. The Republicans that many of these people are voting for are going to actively try to cut those benefits. Take it to another level. Do you remember the guy that was sending out bomb threats for Donald Trump? I mean, not for Trump, but he was sending out bomb threats. Come to find out, Muchin, he was sending out these threats because he was animated about the people attacking Trump and everything else, but also because he was scared that they were going to shut his, foreclose on his house. Like, his behavior to some degree was driven by poverty, and yet and still, avid Trump supporter. It is utterly bizarre. I suspect that these people believe that they've been fucked over, in which case, the thing that is fighting the system that fucked them over is Donald Trump. And that's a sad place to be. I'll end this here. I liked her response here. And at the point where she got the crowd on her side, it was over. Now, mind you, the crowd is on her side already. And there's a minority opinion that's having a go at her. But she handled it, and I would imagine that after that, she probably heard him out. But nevertheless, I'll end this here. Ocasio-Cortez doing her thing. Let's see this one more time.
Dignified life. And he loved his experience at Brooklyn Tech because he went to a good school. My question is, why are there only 5 or a handful of schools in New York City that are seen together as the best? And my question is, why isn't every public school in New York City a Brooklyn Tech caliber school? Everyone should be. And so my appeal to what I'm hearing, and I respect the concern, because we need to put our children first. And so I understand the concern. But my concern, I'd be happy to engage with these folks. My concern is that this right here, when we're fighting each other, is exactly what happens under a scarcity mindset. Because this should not be the fight. This should.
What is the reality of an individual that comes to a meeting like that and disagrees with that point? Let's expand education for our kids. Let's make sure that that education is robust. Let's make sure anybody that wants to go to college, to the degree that they want to go to college, if that's a bachelor's, if that's a master's, if that's a doctorate, we as a society should help them because it is a benefit to our society. I mean, mind you, an argument that it's beneficial to the individual and we care about the individuals in our society should be enough in and of itself in a morally advanced society. But whatever. I'll even take it on the premise that our society benefits when the people in our society can get an education and when it is not, this whip for the rest of their life for the temerity of getting the education. It is a benefit of our society. Why would you bitch at that? And when you want the money that you pay in your tax dollars to be used for the benefit of the people in your society. Also, please understand and realize that those kids that are growing up, if they don't get that education, if they don't have access to the things that they need, they will still leave their imprint on the society itself. It's just not going to be an imprint in the way that you like it. I mean, let's be very clear. Kids are not necessarily blank slates, but those kids are programmed by the culture and the society that they grow up in. If they are left in bad situations and in bad straits, they will express that when they get older. That is not necessarily something we should want in our society, and we should want the best for our kids in our society. I don't understand why that's a controversial opinion. It's controversial to somebody. Ocasio knocking down Heckler. I will end this here. Let's see. Skip Rock. Ocasio basically just called Heckler. She did not. Alright, I'll end this here. Thanks all. I'll see you guys tomorrow for Patreon appreciation. If you enjoyed the content, please consider supporting the content through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all.